Hey there investors, in this video we'll be looking at FuelCell Energy. The ticker symbol for FuelCell Energy is FCEL. And the reason we'll be looking at FuelCell is because of unusual option activity. We look at unusual option activity because we want to follow the smart money. The smart money is made up of large, sophisticated institutional investors with buying power in the millions. These are investors who are either buying large volumes of calls, thinking that the price of a stock will go up very quickly, or buying large volumes of puts, thinking that the price of a stock will go down very quickly. The great thing about options is that they give us a time frame, which is the expiration of the contracts. They also give us a strike price, which is where investors think the stock is going to move. As investors, we can try to take advantage of that information by following their trades and take a more conservative position to try to make a return on our investment. Remember, investors, these videos are for entertainment purposes only. Please check out the disclaimer in the description below, as well as other information covered in this video. So with that, let's dive right into the details. What's been going on with FuelCell Energy and the stock? So looking at FuelCell, we can see that stock kind of took a breather from reaching its highs on the previous day, but nonetheless we can see that the stock is making the climb back up after some time of consolidation around this range. And in the long term, we can see that the stock has been increasing almost 450% within the last 3 months, and that's over 1,300% in a year. So the returns for FuelCell have been pretty high, and it's actually breaking past its previous established highs. So we can also tell that based on the market trends, FuelCell has been benefiting from a lot of the EV market rally that has been going on and a lot of the energy rallies that have taken place, as well as some of the policies and proposed policies that the new administration is rolling out. So let's take a look at what unusual option activity is telling us about the stock. And for that, we'll turn to one of the bigger option traders on CNBC to give us an indication of what the unusual option activity is looking like. So let's take a look at some of the unusual option activity that they're taking a look at on the show. And this is ran as of December 23rd, so it's pretty recent, and some of the contracts that he covers in this video will be contracts that will extend into January. So let's take a look.
FuelCell. And this one, of course, with some of the legislation that's worked its way through, hopefully going to be turning into bills and law next year, as well as a very supportive President Biden. I think FCEL January 13 calls. The stock has already exploded today through 13 just while we've been on this show, Scott. Love that action. I'm in these probably for the next 20 days.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you.
So you can see there that he's pointing out that on the 23rd, the volume of January 13 strike calls increased significantly, up above a huge volume prior to previous days. So we want to be able to see how that volume looks like in terms of the actual option activity. So when we look up FuelCell, and remember this is the most active stock option, so we can see that FuelCell currently has bullish sentiment where 76.3% of the contracts that are being traded for FuelCell are call options and 23.7% are put options. Now, we want to try to understand what is actually driving this unusual option activity to try to see what trends or news and items like that are causing this unusual activity or increase in volume of options for FuelCell. So if we take a look at what's going on in the news by doing a quick Google search of FuelCell and going to the news section, we see that there's a few comments on FuelCell as a trade, FuelCell in general, some coverage on how the stock has been soaring, making it go on its longest win streak. So if we look at, for example, some of the trade, you can see that investors are looking up or paying attention to some of the EV rallies that is going on. So given the popularity of EVs, there's increased competition for companies, and perhaps even more so as executive leadership transfers from an administration deeply supportive of traditional fuel to one where a more green agenda. So the sentiment is turning more in favor of renewable energy and more green energy. So fuel cell has been around for years and has never really been profitable. Then again, demand for electric vehicles and the means to power them had never really been part until recently. So fuel cell is recently expanding its business to include some green energy and renewables, which could be in favor of the company going forward. So we see that there's some analysis on the stock as well. It's been a lot of consolidation as we've been able to see, and lately the stock has just been climbing up from there when we're looking at the RSI. So going into more news, we see that FuelCell has had positive news as part of an aid deal. Congress extended the 26 investment tax credit for fuel cells for 2 years, while existing laws only call for the tax credit to fall to 22 in 2021 and 10%. So they'll be receiving a 26% investment tax credit, which would help their bottom line as they'd be able to take advantage of those tax incentives. And you can see here a little bit more news about some of the sentiment. So let's see here. Stimulus legislation that got passed by Congress includes some provisions for businesses working on renewable energy and alternatives to fuel. The provision includes significant tax credit extensions for solar and wind projects, but there's also opportunity for fuel cell providers to share in some of the tax breaks as well. Fuel cell technology has been under development, but the recent rise of EVs offers fuel cell energy and other companies the opportunity to establish better use cases for their platform. That in turn has led to great interest from investors who have been willing to provide financing for small companies like FuelCell as needed. So now that we kind of understand the sentiment in the market and some of the trends that have been happening as we see this transition to more green and renewable energies, let's take a look at what positions investors are actually taking with unusual option activities. And for that, we'll filter on open interest. So remember, open interest is the amount of contracts that are still open that haven't been traded, so investors are still holding on to this. And right off the bat, we see that this 13 strike price has a huge volume of 14,000. So investors are betting big that the stock will reach $13 per share by at least an expiration of January 15th. And as we saw, you guys, in the video, that's the time frame that the option trader on CNBC is aiming for. And this is, remember, intended to be sort of a little bit extended of a trade from now until January 15th. So it'll give the stock enough time to try to reach that strike price. And as mentioned in the video, the stock was trading around that stock price during the filming of the video. So when we're looking at FuelCell and the position that investors are taking, let's take a look at some technical analysis to determine what the likelihood is that the stock could reach that price. And remember, as we saw in the video, the stock was trading around that 13 strike price during the filming of that video. But looking at the technical analysis right away, we can see that the stock has, and this is the analysis on the charts daily basis. So we can see that the stock has established a support right around this range and established a resistance right around this range. So potentially we could be looking at the stock having to use this range as a level of not only resistance but support if it comes back down. So the upside is pretty compelling, and we also see that through the moving averages. So the moving averages on the 20, 50, 100, and 5-day moving averages are all very bullish indications, and you can see the 20-day moving average just crossing the 100-day and the 50-day moving averages. Strong indication of buying, and you can see that as well in the volume here with this volume spike driving the increase of the price, the stock price up. So now let's take a look at what sort of, well, actually before we look at what position we could probably take, let's kind of take a step back and see where the stock has been in the past. So you can see in the past, based on previous levels, the stock has somewhat consolidated within this range. And one thing to know about looking at technical analysis is whenever a stock consolidates for a long time, the breakout is usually very extensive. So the longer the consolidation period, the higher the breakout. And we've seen that in cases like Tesla, for example. Tesla has been consolidating for a very long time, and only until recently has the stock actually gone parabolic. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. We've seen a lot of consolidation here, and now it looks like the stock is just ready to break out of that this range here that we see. And along with that, we see that the stock just cleared past this other range of consolidation and is breaking out of that, which is a good signal, because the last time that happened, we see that the stock broke out and reached these highs over here. So looking at the technical analysis, it looks pretty likely that the stock will continue this uptrend as it has been consolidating for a pretty extensive time. So now let's take a look at what our position would be and why. And really to do that, we'll look at the trade idea. And the trade idea is basically a summary of our entry point, our call contracts, our target profit levels, and our stop loss levels. And we'll analyze this based on the call that was mentioned in the CNBC video to try to follow that position, as this investor himself is following that strike price of $13. So this idea will also focus on that $13 strike price, just to keep it simple for illustration purposes. So the stock closed around 1251. The idea would be to buy the January 15 calls, $13 strike price for roughly $3.55, with the stock above the pivot point at 1268. So when we look at the previous indicators, this pivot point determines a shift in the stock price movement of FuelCell. So if the stock price crosses 1268, it's a good indication that the stock will continue upwards and then moving towards its resistance points. So from there, we look at taking profits at our target levels, which are as follows. So 13, 13, 33 based on our first level of resistance, and then the levels that follow thereafter. So these are levels where the stock will be trading at, which you could close to take profits. And again, I also want to bring up an important note that even though we're looking at trading strategy for options, you could easily use this to take a trading strategy or position on just trading the stock itself. So you could buy in with the stock above 1268 and then sell at either one of these levels. And that would also work for this strategy. And this is just kind of covering options because we're looking at some of the sentiment and unusual option activity here. And we see that our stop loss or the point where we would cancel this call or close out this call would be with the stock back down to its previous close of $12.30, which you can see here. And so from there, if the sentiment in the market were to turn bearish, we would take the flip side of that position and instead go for the 12 strike price puts, same expiration date, and you have your target profit levels there. And that is also a very liquid position. So let's take a look at these 13 strike price calls. We can see that for expiration date of January 15th, the 13 strike price calls, there's current open interest of 14,305 contracts, which ends up being $2.3 million of open interest. So there's a lot of big money trading in these contracts. So I think the sentiment is strong there, and it's a good sentiment because of the technical analysis that we see in the consolidation that has been happening. And it seems as though the current trends in the news and some of the news outlets have been in favor of FuelCell climbing a little bit higher. So that right there is the trade idea. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know if you have any thoughts on FuelCell specifically or any other questions that you'll have. And stay tuned for more videos. Remember also to like and subscribe if you found any of this information useful. Thanks again for watching.